Hello, everyone. Welcome to Room 9, our region's largest classroom. My name is Mrs. Huson, and I usually teach kindergarten at Hancock Elementary, which is in the Hancock Place School District, located in South St. Louis County. Today, I'm here to teach a second grade social studies lesson for you, though. And don't worry, because even if you're not in second grade, you can totally stick around and learn with me. So last week, we started talking about Native Americans, also known as Indians. And we learned a little bit about their culture. We talked a lot about some different vocabulary words to really get an idea about who they were. We also talked a little bit about how there are different regions of the United States that different tribes lived in. This week, we are going to go over those vocabulary words again a little more quickly, just as a refresh. Then we are also going to read a Native American story, a tale, also known maybe as a legend. And we are going to learn a lot about their culture, their art, and that kind of stuff. And then I also promised you guys last week that since we only had a little bit of time at the end of our lesson to talk about the Native American symbols, that we would do that again, okay? So that's kind of what we're going to cover today. So I hope that you guys are ready to learn. We're gonna go ahead and get started. So like I said, we talked about a lot of different vocabulary words last week. We're gonna go over them quickly again today, just as a refresh, so that way we remember the words that we covered last week, okay? So the first word that we talked about was culture. And we've talked a lot about this word in past lessons. Culture is the customs and beliefs that shape the way of life for a group of people. So the Native Americans had their very own culture. We also talked about what a tribe is. Okay, a tribe is a group of people with the same language, customs, and beliefs who live under one or more leaders. And the Native Americans called their leaders chiefs. A totem pole is a pole carved or painted with symbols that represent the history of a family or a particular tribe. A powwow is like their party, right? A powwow is a festival where different tribes gather to sing, dance, and celebrate their heritage. And they usually get dressed up in their really fancy outfits for their powwows. Legend is an old story that has been passed down over many generations, and it usually explains something in nature that cannot be proven. An Indian drum, remember they love to have powwows where there's lots of dancing and music involved, and their Indian drum is a sacred object to many Native Americans, and it was believed to be the heartbeat of their people. So if you went to one of their powwows, you would definitely hear them playing the drums. The chief. The chief is the head or leader of a tribe. He's respected for his wisdom, and a tribe might have one or sometimes even more than one chief, depending on the size of the tribe. Lacrosse is a sport, a team game in which the ball is thrown, caught, and carried with a long-handled stick. So lacrosse is a game that a lot of Native Americans played. Teepee, this is a cone-shaped structure or house made of animal skins over a pole frame. So this is one type of shelter that Native Americans would use as a house. A lot of times their teepees were made with animal skin or buckskin. So buckskin is a type of soft leather made from the skin of a deer. Not always. They didn't always build their teepees out of buckskin, but sometimes it would be any animal that they could find, like buffalo. They used buffalo a lot, their fur and their skin. Maize is another word for corn. It was a very important crop to the Native Americans because it was one of their main foods. Wickapup is another type of shelter or house that they would build. Moccasins are a type of shoe. Native American shoes made from soft leather that was made from animal skin or hide. A wampum, those are those decorative small beads that they would make out of seashells, and they would string them together to decorate their headdresses or their belts, sometimes their moccasins, and they would make jewelry from it. Adobe. Adobe is a kind of clay brick that some tribes used in the Southwest to make buildings or houses. Travois is a type of sled used by the Native Americans to carry goods over long distances. It's made of two poles joined together and then dragged by a horse or a dog. A chickie is another type of house that they built, that some Native Americans built on stilts. So this is a house that a lot of Native Americans would build if they lived near water. A longhouse is another structure or house that they would build. This one is made of a wooden frame and large sheets of bark from trees so that it was waterproof. And in this one, since it's a larger house, more than one family could live in here. Several families could live in a longhouse. Plank houses. Plank houses were made from cedar and had a fireplace in the center and was also waterproof because of the wood roof. Kachina are dolls that they made. The Hopi men carved these small dolls to represent the Kachina spirits. Nukasta is a human-made stone landmark. Remember, this is the one where they would leave these to help navigate places they've already been, since they didn't really have maps. Camunique is a sled made for traveling on snow and ice. So the Native Americans that lived in areas or regions where it was very cold, or where it is very cold, use those. Like the Arctic, which we've learned a lot about. That's near the North Pole, where it's really cold and snowy. And the house that a tribe might use in the Arctic would be an igloo. It's a shelter or house built from ice and snow. A parka is a waterproof jacket with a hood to help keep warm, and usually made out of animal skins. And then our last one was kayak, which is a type of canoe, and they used animal skins to make it waterproof. And they just had the single opening at the top for the person to sit in. Okay, so those are those vocabulary words that we learned last week. So that was just a quick refresh on those words. Now I would like to go over, I created a presentation that I'd like to share with you. And this is all about Native American art, okay? So you can see on this slide, Native American art, they created many shapes and geometric designs for their art, and these were repeated and became representative symbols that transcend tribal language barriers. So Native art designs became a language in themselves, a form of communication, which we talked a little bit about last week because they used Native American symbols to write, okay? Pottery. So a lot of Indian tribes or Native American tribes would create different types of pottery. The Apaches, who lived on the plains, are the main group to develop pottery making, And because they moved a lot following and hunting a great buffalo herd, they didn't carry a large number of items, so such as ceramic ware. Here's another example of pottery. It's an example of functional art. And they would put these beautiful designs on there, and it would help to tell a story. So even their pottery told stories. Pretty cool, right? Now, we talked a lot about beads, that they created really beautiful pieces of clothing using beads. The Apache Native Americans are known for their beadwork, especially the tribes that lived near Plains Indians. Beads were sewn on their leather war shirts for good luck. They also made beaded bags, arrow quills, saddle blankets. Like I said, they also would add beads to their belts and their moccasins and their headdresses. They would also create sand art. So tribal leaders created sand paintings for the purpose of healing the sick, especially in the Navajo tribe. Most tribes used crushed stone, flowers, pollen, and other natural items from the desert to create their design on the ground. Some sand paintings are also created as art to decorate their walls. It's pretty interesting type of art. Basket making. So basket making existed in the Cherokee Indian tribes, and they would weave their own baskets, which is really cool. So this one up here at the top is really beautiful. You can see the design. They would even add designs to their baskets. Navajo blanket weaving. So the Navajo Indians used weaving as a way to make Native American rugs and blankets. In fact, most Navajo weavings, whether blanket or rug, are referred to as Navajo rugs. The technique of making these items has not changed since the arrival of the Europeans to this country. The Navajo used a vertical wooden frame loom to weave colored threads together. So traditionally, the mothers would pass the art of weaving down to their daughters, and a daughter was taught to weave in steps, often starting with the cleaning of the wool to get it prepared for weaving. And after that, they were taught to spin the wool, and then finally, they would learn to use the small loom to help them weave the blankets or the rugs. So I don't know if you guys have ever used a loom before, but it's usually in a square shape and it has like pegs on it, and you use it to weave the wool between the pegs. So Native American creativity is boundless and sacred. Artistic expression has been a way to worship the gods. Art for art's sake is not part of the Indian life. The artistic designs have beauty and care motivated by their love for nature. Sacred beliefs of American Indians hold that everything living or inanimate shares a place in the universe, and that no one, no thing is above the other. They were the first ecologically aware people anywhere, long before pollution became a serious and popular issue. Native Americans were also among the first to create tools, bowls, and clothing with beauty, and each native art object they made had a specific purpose. Animals they killed were for clothes and food, never for sport. And a natural beauty of obvious appreciation for nature shows in their Indian poetry, paintings, baskets, leatherwork, sand paintings, crafts, moccasins, and even their wood carvings. So the Native American people were very creative. They loved their art, okay? And they showed it in everything that they did. Everything that they created had beautiful designs, which is really, really beautiful. Okay, I have a story for you. This is, it's called How Bear Lost His Tail, and it's an Iroquois tale. So Iroquois is a tribe of Native Americans. And you're going to have to bear with me because I am going to be using different voices. This is a reader theater piece, meaning you need multiple people to read it, kind of like a play. But since I'm here all by myself, pardon me, I am going to do it on my own, and I'll just change my voice for the different parts, okay? So how Bear lost his tail. So narrator 1 says, a bear traveled far from home looking for food. On his journey, he met an old fox. Fox says, I just saw strange little animals playing at the nearby river. I think they dove down into a burrow. This was true. The fox had not seen the little animals come back up to play. Perhaps they are young otters. We could go catch them for dinner. You should come. Bear says, that sounds delicious. Bear went running toward the river. He sat at the edge of the water and saw his reflection. Bear thought it was one of the animals Fox had seen, so he waited to see if it would reappear. Don't worry, they'll come back. Bear waited for a long time. Then he got an idea. Maybe I can catch the otters with a fishing line, but where do I get a line and some bait? Bear wasn't quite sure his idea would work until Fox gave him some advice. Why don't you swim out to the log? If you stay out there, you can use your tail for the line and the bait. Then when you get a bite, you just whip your catch toward shore and I will keep it safe for you. I think that will work. So Bear swam to the log. He made sure he wouldn't fall. Then he put his tail in the water. At this time, bears had really broad and long tails. Bear's tail could reach the bottom of the river. It wasn't long before. I got one. It's not a bird or a fish. I bet it's a juicy otter. Bear flung the otter to the bank where Fox was waiting. That's fine. Keep up the good work. Again and again, Bear put his tail in the water. When it shook, he threw what he caught to Fox. Bear kept doing this until a great cold and gusty north wind blew over the water. The river became quiet. The waves stopped. The water became as smooth as a blanket. The mighty north wind froze the whole river. Bear didn't even notice. He was too busy thinking about everything he caught. Bear also didn't notice that Fox was busy eating what he had caught. Bear was still focused on catching otters. They're tasty. I don't feel any more nibbles on my tail. Oh, it's just the north wind. Wait until it stops blowing, then you'll catch more. Bear waited a long time. It was starting to get dark. He still had a long way to go to get home carrying all he caught. Fox, would you like to help me carry my catch home and share the feast? But Fox was nowhere to answer. Fox, would you like to help me carry my catch? Again, there was no reply. So Bear started to lift himself up and head to shore. He felt heavy tugging. This is my biggest catch yet. I'm going to have to pull really hard. Bear pulled as hard as he could and jumped to shore, but his tail stayed frozen in the water. Fox was nowhere to be found. All Bear saw was a pile of chewed bones. Bear was sad. He had been tricked. Even worse, he was now tailless. He started back home for the winter months. The end. So that story was interesting in a few ways. First, poor Bear, right? Fox tricked him. He told him that he would stay on the shore and catch all of the things that Bear caught for them. But really what he did was he ate them, and he didn't leave any for Bear. And in the story at the beginning, it says that bears back then had really broad, long tails. Think about bears now. Do bears have long, broad tails now? No, they don't, do they? They just have a little nub. And so this story is saying that that's how that happened, okay? It's a legend or a tale telling us that bears used to have really long tails, but because Bear's tail got frozen in the water, it got pulled off, and now they just have little nubs. So that's interesting. And I still feel bad for Bear. Don't you feel bad for him for not getting to eat any of those fish or otters that he caught? Poor Bear. And it really wasn't very kind of Fox to trick him either. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Native Americans, the regions where they're from. We've talked a lot about their culture, learned vocabulary words about different objects that they use. We've even listened to one of their stories, one of their tales, and we've looked at some of their beautiful artwork and basket weaving and their rug and blanket weaving. And the last thing I would like to do before we head off for the day and start our weekend is to go back over the Native American symbols. So remember, we learned that they didn't write words like we write words. They used symbols to help with their drawings and to communicate. And I shared this with you last week, this picture of the different symbols, Native American symbols. And I wrote a couple of short messages, okay? But what I would like to do today is give you guys the chance to write some of your own messages. So if you would like to take a minute to grab a piece of paper and something to write with, we're going to write some messages together. So I have a piece of paper and I have some markers, and I would like to write some messages using our Native American symbols. So here's our Native American symbols. We're going to see if we can do kind of both at the same time. All right. So we can write lots of different sentences. Now, remember last week when we did this, some of them sounded a little strange because there's words missing, right? So it would say like man happy. That would just mean like the man is happy, okay? But they didn't have all of the words that we have to be able to write them. So they used symbols. So you can work on your own message, but I'm going to go ahead and do some alongside you, okay? So we could say something like, let's see, we could say, man hunt in the mountains for bear. Okay, so that could be one type of message. So man hunt in the mountains for bear. Now we could also write another message. Maybe I could say something like, friendship makes me happy and is good luck. Did you guys take the time to write a message using the Native American symbols? Hold it up and show me what you wrote. Wow, you guys did a great job coming up with some really awesome messages using the Native American symbols. Thank you for sharing those with me. Wow, that's great. All right, friends. Well, there you have it. That's all I have for you today. Now we've learned a lot about Native Americans and their beautiful creativity and their symbols, and you even took the time to write some messages using the symbols with me. I am so happy that you joined me today. I want to thank you so much, and I want you to have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.
Teaching in Room 9 is made possible with support of Bank of America, Dana Brown Charitable Trust, Emerson, and viewers like you.